I feel like there's a lot of talk about obviously like, it's an overstimulating world we live in, right? The access to information we have, social media, obviously, just everyone kind of feeling like they're maybe overworked and underpaid or whatever the overstimulate, things going on. Like I feel like the music that I make or that my friends or colleagues make that is in this space, like I think it's just one extra tool that we can introduce into our nightly routine or morning routine, really, that just kind of helps you like pause for a second and at least give you some sense of like releasing, all these things in your body or in your.
Welcome to the Soulfull Sound Podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode on the Soulfull Sound Podcast. I'm joined by the awesome Adam Bokesch, who has spent nearly 2 decades shaping sound across genres and mediums. His catalog of sleep compositions, meditation soundscapes, and immersive natural recordings has since become a global resource for restoration, balance, and peace. And boy, do we need more of those things. Welcome in, Adam.
Oh, thank you so much, Simone. Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, talk with you,
Yes.
and share everything that's been going on.
Amazing. Well, I
Yeah.
usually like to top and tail my conversations with 2 simple things. Simple in that
Okay.
it's your personal story, whatever you might want to share with us that kind of got you into the music that you're creating today and what you're doing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, yeah, I've kind of come from a different background of music where I used to play in indie rock bands and I would play jazz or classical but I've always had this love of like ambient music and exploring sound and just textures and design and it's just kind of led me to this place where I've found like this is my dream that I've just always loved this type of music and finding like a way to actually make a living from it has just been almost like natural where I've kind of pushed and pulled all these different areas and then I ended up becoming really what I naturally just felt I always wanted to be. And so
Yeah.
it's been really, really a fun journey. So
Incredible. Yeah, that is
yeah,
quite a transition from indie rock
yeah,
bands and touring. And I
yeah,
and I and I read that you were like a touring drummer as well, so drumming and moving around in that way. So I'm
yes,
curious what drew you into music for sleep, because that's
sure.
music is music, but that's quite a contrast. So talk about what drew you
Yeah,
into that in
absolutely.
particular.
Yeah. So ambient music or experimental music, that was kind of where I started when I kind of leaned into this. But really, there's a difference between that type of music and utility music, right? And I think that that's kind of where I've been exploring, like where these kind of differences lie. Where like when I first started kind of getting hooked up with my team, and like when they were like, "Hey, we need like actual calming, like meditative sleep music," I was like, "Great, love it." And so I'm like, pulling in all these different cool sounds or exploring like, what it seems like to me at first was something exciting and to explore this. And then I realized like this actually is a little too much, right? It's a little too experimental or too interesting almost. And so I started chipping away at like, okay, maybe this doesn't work or this doesn't work, or maybe this actually really works. And so finding what actually helps people like calm down or when you're sleeping or meditating, you don't want any distractions. You don't want your ear to go and say like, "Ooh, I like this melody," or like, "Oh, I'm actually like feeling, you know, all these new experiences." Like you almost need it to be more utility, to be more consistent or direct to the purpose. And so I think there was a point, it was probably 2022, 2021, where like I really started dialing in like what the sleep music or the sleep community really needs from music. And I think that was a point for me that it just really clicked, and I almost started loving it more because of like how minimal it could be.
Mm. Yeah, there's so many beautiful nuggets, and minimal is interesting because so I'll give you an example. I listen to some of your music, which I absolutely love,
Yeah, thank
and
you.
thank you. And I generally am someone when I'm working or I'm in a creative space where I like silence because I find that
Sure.
other sounds, working in a sound field myself, I find that other sounds can be quite distracting.
Right.
Anyway, as I put your music on, I just thought, well, let me just have a listen. I'm doing other things. And
Hmm.
it did strike me that I was able to stay in a place of relaxation and concentration, interestingly enough, and not be drawn into the music in very like, I mean, listen to this music and it's distracting. So you use
Right.
consistency as the as a word, which I like.
Hmm.
Because my understanding for, really changing the brain waves and getting into those alpha states and deeper states of relaxation, that there
Hmm.
needs to be a level of entrainment, which requires consistency or
Yes.
even on some level monotony, if you like, that there is some
Right.
repetition, you know what I mean? So I,
Yes.
I really
Yes.
resonate with that. And I'm curious how much you use like frequencies or the rhythms very consciously when you're composing and creating
Sure.
your music.
Yes. So two different styles again, like and I'm not exactly sure which of my music you listen to, but and we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But
Yeah.
some of my utility, I guess you would call projects that are directly related for sleeping or meditation. I do use a lot of these solfeggio frequencies or binaural beats is one of my favorites to use because of that kind
Yeah.
of drony consistency that when you're sleeping, you almost need that like need that flat feel, right?
Mhm.
For me, like I don't listen to music when I sleep. I listen to white noise just to kind of help drown out any distracting sounds. But I know a lot of people that have to have some sort of music, and it's a great way to like introduce some of these like binaural beats or solfeggio frequencies that all have different, you could say like healing powers, right?
Yeah.
I believe that, with these solfeggio frequencies specifically, there's two sides of it. Like maybe just in the tone itself, like for example, like a 174 hertz, like
Mhm.
is claiming to like remove like pain or just the stress reduction, right? Maybe the tone itself isn't healing itself, but when you focus on that sound and you think about or meditate on that sound, it really does something to your brain or to your body, like to your mood or your emotion, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like whenever I put in a frequency into a song, or I normally would start with that frequency and then kind of build around it. They all do have their own little pieces that you kind of connect with, and it's very cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I usually use the word intention in that, setting the
Hmm.
intention for whatever coupled with the frequency is it just
Hmm.
magnifies it so beautifully.
Yes.
Hi, beautiful soul. Before we continue, I want to acknowledge you for being here and for listening so deeply. Now, if you're enjoying this conversation and you haven't yet subscribed, I'd love to invite you to do so now. It really helps this work reach more people, and it means so much to have you in this space. Well, back to the conversation.
Yes.
So I'm curious, and I know that not all of your music is about sleep, but let's just stay
Sure.
there for a little bit longer.
Okay.
I'm wondering what your relationship is like with sleep.
Sure.
Because you said you don't necessarily listen to music while you sleep, and neither do I. I prefer silence. I don't mind listening
Okay.
to things to help me induce sleep, but then I want silence.
Okay.
So I'm curious, what's
Yes.
your relationship with your sleep and how this was
Okay.
born? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. My relationship with sleep has been interesting coming from somebody that is making music, sleep music as their profession, right? So I would say that I struggle with like a light version of insomnia. Most nights it takes me a while to fall asleep. I don't remember this always being a problem in my life, like since I was a kid. Yeah, maybe a little bit, but I did grow up listening to music like the radio when I was trying to go to sleep. That was like, I had my boombox right next to my bed, right? And then there was probably a time where I just was in like silence, like didn't do anything. And then I think since when my daughter was born 9 years ago, I started listening to white noise just because of like, I felt like I was waking up from like any little sound.
Mm.
Not that I wouldn't go to get her, but just, like it was kind of it was helpful.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this insomnia came from in my life. I always would think that it was kind of birthed out of like maybe some stress or anxiety or like money or typical things, right? And so for a while I had a lot of student debt, and so I was like, man, maybe it's just the student debt, maybe it's like all this whatever that's hanging over my head. Well, I paid off my student loans and it
Mm.
stayed, right? And then I was like, well, maybe I just need to get my career to grow and maybe then it'll fix it. Well, my career grew and it's still here, right? So there's all these like things that I'm like, what is causing this, right? And I think lately I've really tried to like narrow it down, focus on it, like really confront it, right? Because, obviously sleep is one of the most, if not the most important physical activities of our existence as humans, right? And so I've I think I've narrowed it down to it's not that I feel like I need to get up and do something. I know a lot of people I've talked to are like, oh, I lay in bed and I'm like, oh, I forgot to do this, or I have to get up and I have to whatever, fix the fence outside, or
Yeah.
right? Like there's all these things where
Yeah.
like maybe I need to get up and journal or write down these thoughts. Like for me, I've really narrowed it down to this abstract creative loop in my brain where I just feel like I'll lay there and either play a song over and over or try and compose a song, but like unintentionally. Like it's not something that I'm like trying to like make happen. But it's something that just is like it's like a restless creative brain.
Mm.
And then it almost will trigger into a little bit of like an anxiety where like I'm like, oh, well, now I'm gonna only get 6 hours of sleep, or now I'm only gonna get 5 hours of sleep. And then I start getting like that sort of like heart racing panic thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of my relationship with sleep right now. And I feel like I've tried a few different things like supplements. I've tried melatonin, I tried Benadryl, NyQuil, all that stuff, right? And I stopped doing all the medicine. Like, won't do it ruins your day. Melatonin on a light dosage maybe is okay here and there to kind of reset. But again, like every night, it causes a little bit of lag in your day, or it causes maybe minor depression. And none of that is good, right? And so trying to find the balance of like, how do you sleep? How do you enjoy your day without feeling like drowsy or medicated?
Mm.
Um, and so we can continue on this conversation all day long because
Yeah, I'm sure.
I've been really, I've been really trying to figure out, like I've never taken like Ambien or any of these like really like prescription sleep medicine. Like I don't believe in any of that. I feel like it's just, it's not real sleep, right? It's kind of like fake. And so long term, I think that's probably not good for a lot of people. And again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a sleep scientist. I'm just I'm just kind of like taking what I've learned from what I've read or what my experience is and just kind of putting together like what is the options here, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that a lot of the times as teachers or people in general, we often go deeply into what we need, you know. So it doesn't really surprise me that you're creating this amazing music to help people sleep and have a relationship where I need to sleep better. It's like we
yeah,
like to find ways to, for our own healing, but also then being able to share that for others. Now, as
sure.
a musician, I know I've asked this to many musicians, and I know that a lot of us don't listen back to our music. We create it, we love it, we put it
Okay.
out there, but not everyone listens back to I mean, apart from, okay, you're editing and you're going through all the processes, everything, but
Yeah,
it's
sure.
done, it's out there.
Sure.
So, what's the relationship like for you listening to your own music? Does it help you with sleep? And just tell me about what you do with your own music now.
Sure. Yeah, there's definitely, when you're in the midst of creating it, that, you're listening to it over and over again. one good thing about this type of music, and when I am actually in the like production phase of this music, I really try to not overthink it or over edit it or over
Mm.
anything, right? Like a lot of this is supposed to come natural. That's not to say that I don't spend time on it, but I've found like, again, I come from a background of like producing pop music or indie music or whatever, and I would spend, 6 months on a song or whatever before, and that you can't do that with this type of music, right? It has to come natural or just kind of be what it is. And and so then when you are working on it or mixing it, you're like, well, this song kind of speaks for itself, right? Like
Mm.
in the process of creating the song, like that is the song. And so uh I feel like I will listen to it when I'm just finishing the project. Like for instance, the Light Remembered album that I put out, I listened to it probably a good dozen times, through just like in different rooms or in my car. And then after that, like I haven't really listened to it since then.
Mm. Mm.
Like I don't really listen to it. Uh, I mean, I'll probably come back to it, but I kind of take a break from it just because it kind of was with me for a while. And then it'll feel new again. And, whenever I'll come back to it in 6 months or a year. On the other hand, the other projects that I have that are more utility based, I tend to play it on a nightly basis, mainly for my daughter
Mm.
when she goes to bed. And so, because some of that is like she just likes it or she likes having some music. And so, like, she has an iPad next to her bed, and like she'll just play, I don't know, one of the sleep albums, just kind
Mm.
of like really low volume on repeat, and it kind of just like helps her feel at peace or connected maybe to me a little bit, or I don't know, this so that kind of that's a nightly routine
Yeah.
that she really enjoys. And so, but again, that kind of music, like the utility sleep music, is less um I want to say personal. That's not maybe the right word. I'm not exactly sure what the word is, but just
Mm.
again, it's more utility based, right? So it when you put it on, you're like it's just kind of there in the background.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
yeah, so
what a gift though, right? Your music
yeah,
is being played by thousands, maybe millions of people to sleep, and it's
yeah.
incredible that it's obviously you have it at home and your daughter is being able to listen to dad and his
I know it's very
creations, and
cool.
it is
Sure.
very cool.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we often forget how whatever healing or whatever we offer out in the world starts at home. And so that's a great
Hmm.
example of, hey, just
Yeah.
put the music on, just relax, coming home from school and all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was Light Remembered that I was listening to actually,
Okay.
and that's the album that I listened to. And so I
Okay.
talk about the creative process. How was it
Sure.
creating that? And I guess for you, where sleep can sometimes feel elusive, like does that
Sure.
impact your creative processes at all? When I'm feeling tired, I sometimes have ideas flowing differently. When I just
Hmm.
wake up, something else, there is a
Hmm.
relationship with sleep, as you said, as human beings, it's one of the biggest, physical things that
Yes.
we can do. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious about your creative process, and then in like I guess liminal space between a dream world and a wake world as well.
Right. So yeah, the last thing you just said, that is the whole premise of that album. And
Mm.
so, I've had kind of at the beginning of our conversation, I talked about like how there's the music that I've kind of like loved creating through my life. And then now like on the other side, there's like this utility based music, right? That's like very sleep, just full like almost sleep science music. And so I feel like the best way to describe this Light Remembered album is how can I take these two different worlds and put like my full expression of what my relationship with sleep is, and like actually write music to what that sounds like.
Mm.
And so that was my goal in making that album. And so it's not necessarily an album that you could sleep to it, but like that wasn't my purpose.
Yeah.
It was almost a like a letter to sleep, like a, you know what I mean? Like it was almost like my journaling at night about like
Mm.
how I feel about my relationship with sleep.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so creatively, I let any sort of expectations or any sort of like planning for like playlisting, I guess, is a good example. Like I do a lot of referencing, right? Because editors are looking for like a specific consistent thing for their listeners, right? And so for this album, I just said, what is the type of music that works for me and how I feel about sleep? And so some of the songs are very, like, you could say ambient, or just they're not really moving. And some of them like kind of have a little faster tempo. Like there's creation to it, there's movement. And so that's, I think, where like the creative process was like sometimes I really feel like, ooh, I'm about to drift off to sleep. Like you get that kind of heaviness, right?
Mm.
Or
Mm.
sometimes you're like heart's racing and you're like lying there awake. And I think that that's kind of some of these songs like Fracture Bloom or Non Place like have a little bit more of this sort of almost like franticness to them, all still calming, but like they just have like more of that sort of like mind racing feel.
Mhm.
Or songs like Quiet Echo is like, okay, I am almost asleep. Like it's here, right? And so I think that's what's really cool about the album is like it almost feels like that first hour or two when you're trying to go to sleep.
Mm.
That's the whole kind of, I guess, purpose. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. A bit of a sonic journal for you as well, which is
yeah,
really, really
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Um, and you speak about mind racing and like some people going to sleep, kind of going over the to-do list in their mind. And I know we all have
Hmm.
our personal relationship with sleep and not sleeping and so on. I'm curious, from your perspective as a composer and musician and all of this, what do you think all is like all the chronic overstimulation that we receive from the outer world? We know what's going on the
Sure,
outside, how it impacts our nervous system, and
sure.
also the kind of music that you're creating, how that can from a nervous system capacity help us to kind
Hmm.
of reduce the stress and just
Yeah.
understimulate sometimes, or just bring us into a state of balance.
Mm. Yeah, that's a lot of it's a loaded question.
It's a lot,
Uh,
yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of talk about obviously like, it's an overstimulating world we live in, right? The access to information we have, social media, obviously, just everyone kind of feeling like they're maybe overworked and underpaid or whatever the overstimulate, things going on. Like I feel like the music that I make or that my friends or colleagues make that is in this space, like I think it's just one extra tool that we can introduce into our nightly routine or morning routine, really, that just kind of helps you like pause for a second and at least give you some sense of like releasing, all these things in your body or in your mind. And you know, I I don't know if there's exactly like things you can do to like perform the best at sleeping, right? Like I don't know if there's like people talk about like don't use your phone an hour before bed. Like great, maybe it's blue light, maybe it's not. It's more of just this like overloading information into your brain that keeps it stimulating, right? And so I think the music or reading or some sort of routine that you can help yourself with, just kind of helps get you into a place that like allows your brain to know like, hey, it's okay to let go,
Mm.
right? You know?
Yeah, yeah. And that is important. It is how the brain has all, as we know, different states, different brainwave states. And sleep is
Hmm.
not going to happen if you're highly and overly stimulated. If you're in a gamma state where you need to concentrate and really focus on
Hmm.
something, it's very different. So I know you consciously use solfeggio frequencies, you said binaural beats and things like that. So you're aware
Yeah.
of the things that can impact from a brainwave capacity, but also in my experience as a sound healer and using sound and as a singer and musician too,
Yeah.
sound does what it needs to. It goes where it needs to go, and it's a really beautiful tool for bypassing the mind. And
Hmm.
that's what we really want when we're wanting to sleep. We don't want to be thinking and in our headspace and go. That's what often keeps people in that state of
Sure.
overstimulation or
Sure.
all of that. So I think it's really important. And because you're talking about some of these pieces, I'd love to bring it up. I'm not a producer and engineer. I work with some amazing ones, and I know that
Yeah.
you have to think about how you mix the album and you create immersive experiences. That kind of
Sure.
mixing it in Dolby and making sure that we're hearing it from all parts of this of the room, through our ears, through our cells, our being. Speak about that
Yeah.
piece for you in your music, and just a little. You can nerd out a bit. I may not
Okay.
understand it all, but others listening will probably. But I'd love to know more about how you create that piece to really facilitate what you're creating with this amazing music.
Yeah. Sure. So yeah, without getting too nerdy about it, Dolby Atmos or spatial audio, as Apple calls it, that kind of became the standard or popular about 3 years ago ish, maybe around there. About 2 years ago is when like they really kind of was like spatial audio is a big deal. And so at first, I'm used to mixing in stereo. Everybody's used to just listening in stereo. I mean, we had 4 point or 5.1 or whatever
Mhm.
in the past, but for the most part, like stereo has been, this standard way of listening to music for
Yeah.
50, 60 years or whatever, well, longer than that actually. But so when Atmos came out, it was almost a little daunting. It was like, okay, I have to learn like a whole new way of mixing or creating music. And it felt a little overwhelming at first, especially like in terms of like a job. Like it was like the music that I'm releasing like needs to be mixed in Atmos for Apple now. And so it wasn't like like, oh, this is a fun new thing. It was like if you're releasing music to Apple, like this is what we need. And so
Mhm. Mhm.
it almost forced my hand, but looking back, there was a little bit of growing pains with it. But now I'm realizing that Atmos, what it enables you to do as a mixer or a producer in music is you have, instead of like two boxes, like you have a giant sphere to work in, right? And so
Mhm.
instead of trying to cram all this information into a small two box stereo file, you have like all this room to work with, right? And so as long as you don't overdo it, it enables you to like really open up the space in the way that the sound fills your ears or fills the room.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really fun and inspiring to feel the way that Atmos enters your like your ears, right? It's really cool. And so I try and keep it simple because it can get wild. I mean, they're called objects in mixing in Atmos, and so you can place sound anywhere. Like there's so many options. And so what I'll do is like find things that make sense. Like if I'm doing a meditative track, for instance, like if there's some birds,
Mhm.
I'll typically like put them a little bit like higher in the way that the sound, hits you, or like I'll use reverbs that, in the past you only had them coming out your left and right. Well, a reverb that is fully immersive around you feels different. The way that that sound source hits that reverb and it goes around
Mhm.
you, it surrounds you. Just like in a room, like if you're at a sound bath, you know, if someone's playing a singing bowl, like in a room, that room generates that sound and resonates off the walls
Mhm.
in a different way than just a left and right stereo, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been a really fun journey learning how to utilize that mixing medium, especially with this type of ambient music.
Mm.
I've heard a lot of mixes, great, super fun, but like, whatever, you'll have like Elvis or Tom Petty or something. And like, it's really cool. It's super fun, but like there'll be like guitars in the back of the room and then the drums are up here. Whatever, it's kind of fun, but like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And some of those mixes are actually really cool, but it almost like doesn't make sense sometimes. You're like, why would the guitars be in the back or something? It's just some of it is like a little bit like almost jarring in a way. And so it just really makes sense for this type of music. It just really works really well. So it's been super fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. And yes, we know that our ears are what we hear through, but we feel and sense vibration and sound through our entire body. So I like that
Yeah.
idea of it coming from all around us. We
Yeah.
know when surround sound came into, everyone wanted to have the setup where there's a speaker there all around the room and everything. And it is for
Hmm.
that immersive experience where you are in the world with the sound, not
Hmm.
witnessing it from as a bystander in a way. And it does change the directional experience sonically. So I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Another cool thing about Atmos, and this is more on the tech side of it, but
Yeah.
everyone's like what you talked about, like the 5.1 surround system. Well, unfortunately, unless you had the speaker set up, you can't listen to a 5.1 surround sound
Yeah.
mix. But Atmos, which is what's really cool about it, is it renders, right?
Mm.
So you could have your iPhone and it plays in Atmos, or
Mhm.
you can have a full theater with 148 speakers playing in Atmos,
Yeah.
and anything in between, which is really cool. So people don't have to buy things like AirPods. They're just already in spatial. Like if you play it on a mono speaker in a car, it'll just render down to that speaker. And so there's all
Mhm.
these different options that you don't have as like a consumer. You don't have to seek out anything crazy or new to buy. It's just there. You can get a sound bar that does Atmos, and then great, you have a cool Atmos sound in your room.
Yeah.
Or you can just keep what you have, and it'll just render to that. So it's a great format of music or sound or for movies or whatever, because it's just whatever somebody has in their house,
Hmm.
you can utilize that form of media.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great. That's good to know
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. You don't
Beautiful.
have to think too hard. Yeah.
No, you don't, but it does make a difference, I think, I mean,
Hmm.
I know I'm a consumer, but I'm also in the music industry. So I know the importance of how sound lands, right? And so
Hmm.
that for it to have that immersive experience to me makes all the difference. And in my in
Hmm.
my what I call voice baths, which is because my voice is the main instrument in a sound bath.
Yeah.
It for
Okay.
me that
Yeah.
setup and how my sound travels around the room is really important. So
Yeah.
it's exactly as you've just said, being able to have the sound land all multi-directional,
Yes.
and that really has a very different experience in our senses and how we sense the world and sound and everything like
Sure.
that. So that's
Sure.
beautiful. Now, coming back to that kind of luminal, I like that you kind of reference this liminal state between, again, night and dawn, like or wake and sleep, not necessarily night and dawn,
Hmm.
but let's say night and dawn for this sake. And I
Okay.
want to know about that kind of creative space for you when you are kind of like you're not fully waking up, but there is this element of I am just waking up. I know there's a lot of research out there, and I love Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and he talks about that kind of time in the morning when you're just waking up, how
Mm.
potent the time is to utilize your brain and your energy and what's going on around you. So I'm curious if, your experience with that part of the day.
Mm. So my morning routine, yeah. There's two separate, right? There's the time where you just wake up. You're like, is there a little bit of light in the room? And then there's like your morning routine. I feel like for me, I wake up and a lot of times I have to be almost like disciplined to not just grab my phone and like
Mhm.
check email or whatever, even if it's like 5 a.m., and you're like, I'm still wanting to go to sleep. And so typically I normally will wake up, around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then try and stay in bed just a little bit. Uh, Personally, I like to do that almost like as a little bit of a discipline to not just get up and check my phone immediately. Um, some of it is trying to get that extra little bit of sleep into.
Yeah.
uh, and so, but yeah, I always kind of tend to find a little bit of like restlessness at first. And so lately I've been really trying to just like accept that, like, okay, I woke up early. I want to just be mindful of that and just like maybe think about my day, think about how I'm going to treat myself in the morning. Like, am I going to go on a run this morning? Am I going to just kind of almost like treat it as like, instead of like feeling frantic or stressed, like, oh shoot, I woke up a little earlier than I wished.
Mm.
Take that time to just spend a little bit of um, just like mental calmness,
Yeah.
because we do wake up at 7 to get up and have coffee and get our daughter ready for school, and so I'm up every morning pretty early because of that. Um, but I don't feel like as soon as I wake up, like if it's early, 5:30, 6 or whatever, I don't feel like a creative urge
Mm.
typically. I don't ever feel like, oh, I have to go write music or I have to like do this or that. It's almost like I have to feel disciplined into not wanting to grab my phone or check my stream numbers or check whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's like a little bit of like discipline's literally the word, because as soon as my eyes open, you're just like, okay, like what have I missed? Right. And so I think lately it's been a big part of like how I want to start my day, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Being really intentional and
yeah,
purposeful in the
yeah.
choices. And it sounds like for you, it's more like I'm not going to do those things and leave space for
Hmm.
what wants to emerge, as opposed to I'm going to get up and do this and do that and do this and do that. So there's that
Right.
coming
Right.
back to your music, the minimal piece again, or space, just do
Yes.
less
Hmm.
right now
Do
in this
less.
moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
itself, that's creating space, which I think is important.
Hmm. Yep.
And we kind of spoke about your story at the beginning, and you spoke about
Mm.
the lots of different things that you do. So I know you've been touring, engineering, you're a producer, all of this amazing stuff, and now kind of going a lot into the wellness, let's call it, focused music.
Sure.
um, Looking back, I wonder if there is a moment or if there's something significant that you felt prepared you for this chapter of your musical
Mm.
life.
Yeah. Sure. Well, the touring was something that it was a really good time of my life, for a lot of reasons. It was also a very difficult and push and pull, like with like this sort of like direction of like what I wanted for myself. And the pandemic shaped this a lot. That was kind of the turning point, which it seems like a very similar story for a lot of people. The way that just kind of changed the way that we live our lives, right? And so I was touring prior to 2020, playing in bands. I was producing a ton of pop music, doing a lot of like pop tracks, recording indie bands, basically just kind of saying yes to everything in a sense, where if someone was like, would you play drums on this country song? Yes, great. Would you engineer an audiobook? Yes, great. Just anything to kind of grow this business that I was trying to get. But touring, it just slowly became a little bit of it felt like a weight on me, where I felt like I was not only away from my family, but it just, for my experience, just wasn't like paying for like the financial side versus the like reward of like feeling like the performance was like great. It
Mm.
just never really lined up for me. And I do love performing, but it's been one of those things in my life where, uh, since the pandemic, I've kind of tabled. But the band that I was playing with at the end of 2019, we signed like a major booking deal and we were like ready to go. And then the pandemic hit and that expired. We stopped touring. And I felt for a few months at least like pretty lost. Like, what am I doing with my life. It was a weird time. The studio shut down for the most part. Live tracking sessions were limited. I was working with like a sync licensing company, and so I did have music that I previously recorded or wrote, like that was still kind of funneling. But again, it's like the film industry was pretty weird and not a lot of people had money to pay for this stuff, right? And so I kind of was at this point where I said, okay, I need to just do what I know that I'm good at and what I love to do. And that was making ambient music. So I started writing this album called Orange Curtains in a Quiet Room. And uh, that title actually came from back when I was in college up in Ohio. There was it was like a study hall, and it was like a 2 or 3 story room, like super high ceilings. And they had these giant orange curtains in the room, like huge, like I don't know if they were velvet or like that sort of like thick, curtain. But there was like all these people in this room, I don't know how many students, 50 or whatever. And it was like dead silent. And so it was just kind of like, it was a weird observation for me to be like, there's all these people like in this giant room and it's like dead quiet and like I'm just watching these curtains. So anyways, that's where the titles came from. And so so that title like stuck with me for a while. I mean, that was 2000 and I don't know what year that was, 2005, 2006. And so I wrote this album and I had no direction, like no, I had nowhere to put it. I was just going to release it just on my own. And I got an Instagram message from the label owner that I'm with now. And he was like, "Hey, I really like your music. Like, would love to represent you." It's wild timing, right? And so I had this record done and ready. And this was at the end of 2020, going into 21. And he basically was like, "I love this. Let's do it." So put this album out. And it was this turning point for me where I was like, I let go of all these other things in my life that I just like kept feeling pressure to do.
Mm.
And I just made what I felt came natural to myself, like what I loved, what I've always really just like dreamed of doing. And I had no expectations because I kind of was already not like at like a low point in my life, but it was just there was nothing else at that moment, right? That's all I had. Um, and so that was the moment when I got on one of the first big playlists that I had. And I was like, okay, this is maybe the start of something. And that's when he was like, "Hey, have you tried to do like actual sleep music?" And so then that kind of goes back to when I was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." And I was like trying to do all this cool stuff. And I realized like, wait a second, I need to strip this way down.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, so ever since then I started just it was almost like this kind of like X, like a crisscross of like saying yes to everything until the point where I started saying no to things.
Mm.
Um, in the most positive way, right? Like where you start transitioning into this like place where you can strip away everything that isn't you, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like that is when I started really understanding like who I was and what I was good at doing.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. I feel that the thread that's tying together a lot of your share is that piece of stripping back,
Hmm.
minimal, making
Hmm.
space, removing the things that aren't needed, all of that.
Hmm.
And that's from your personal story as well as your music making.
Hmm.
That thread,
Yeah.
even as you spoke about waking up, it's like not that, strip all of that back and just allow that space
Right.
for whatever wants to emerge. And I think that's a really powerful nugget. I just wanted to kind of draw it out of everything because
Hmm.
I'm hearing it in the same thing in different ways, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And how important it is for us to step into alignment, to let go of the things that maybe once did fulfill us and did support us and did help us or even excite us to a point, but
Sure.
being able to let that go and strip it back so that we can, yeah, reveal more of who we are, and that reflects something completely different,
Hmm.
which like you said, the pandemic and lockdown really was a big shift for many people. The amount of people I've spoken to who had those breakthrough moments in that time, or breakdown, breakthrough, was
Sure.
was really, it's very poignant. And I think that that's really beautiful that you've been able to go, well, yeah, that was then, and now I've stripped that back, and more of me is dry in the
Hmm.
driver's seat, and now I'm saying
Hmm.
yes to the things that are aligned. It's really
Yes.
important. That's really beautiful.
Yes. Hmm.
That's
Thank you.
really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Light Remembered. Now, you told me about the title of the orange curtains in a quiet room, and I loved that. So, what brought Light Remembered? I'd love to speak more about the album now. What was that title?
Okay, well, a lot of times, like I almost do when I'm coming up with titles for songs or titles for albums, a lot of it just is almost like just like word search. Like I'm just like grabbing like random words and like putting them together. Just there's a million options. Like how do you narrow something down, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think too long or take too long, you're never going to get anything done, right? It's just always going to be, I don't know. And so I found, I grabbed these words like light, dusk, like the thought of like memory. Um, so the first and last track of the album, Light Remembered and Dusk Embraced, it's kind of this sort of like bookend of like when you're about to go to sleep, it's dark outside, right? And so I'm like almost like remembering when it was light outside when I
Mm.
was less anxious or something in that world, right? And then the last track, Dusk Embraced, it almost is this kind of purpose of like, okay, I'm embracing the fact that I have to go to sleep now, right? And so
Mm.
that's kind of where those two sort of titles came from. Everything else in the middle is a little kind of more abstract,
Mm.
but yeah, Light Remembered, it's literally just a word combination of me lying in bed trying to go to sleep, feeling like I'm remembering when it was light outside. It's as simple as
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I mean, as you know, we know that music is always open to interpretation, and that
Hmm.
interpretation may come through the lens, or most likely will come through the lens of the listener, unless they
Hmm.
can hear it exactly from the person who created it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I was listening to your music, as I said, and I didn't know the story of this until now.
Hmm.
For me, because of my background, very much in the spiritual field, healing and all of this well-being side. I just thought how beautiful to be able to soften at night and
Hmm.
remember the light that we are. And I had a very
Great.
different,
Sure.
interpretation of it, which is what's beautiful about music, because we all get to
Sure.
choose from that.
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
However, you do describe, or you did describe somewhere that I don't know if it's specifically this album, but I think it is, kind of acts as both a mirror and a remedy.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
what do you feel this album in particular, Light Remembered, is asking listeners to remember about themselves?
Mm. I think the biggest takeaway would be just to remember the peace that you have of being human. I mean, that is the
Mm.
biggest direction that that I've had for this whole album is like the fact that we get to be human here on Earth and like remembering that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that kind of goes off of what you just said, like remembering the light, right?
Mm.
Um, but there's a peacefulness that I feel like we tend to forget, and it's just a reminder of embracing that peacefulness.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I know that while we can call your music sleep music or ambient music, if someone is listening to Light Remembered without trying to sleep, so it's just
Hmm.
listening for the art of it,
Sure. Yeah.
What do you hope that they would notice or feel from that perspective, not about
Sure.
the sleep itself?
Yeah. Well, again, I really love exploring textures. I really love the way that sound uh, is created, and I use a lot of different instruments to do that. Like there's a piano. It's like 100-year-old piano at my studio, which is
Mm.
kind of the feature of the whole album, and it has its own personality, its own life to itself. It has a story. Like it was just left at our studio. Like we don't really know whose it was, And so like that instrument is kind of the I guess like the nucleus of the album. Most of the songs all have that piano on it. All of these other instruments that I've like collected over the years, like some are vintage. I have like a mid '80s like Yamaha synthesizer that I use. Kind of has like this organ sound, kind of string ensemble. I use that a lot. I feel like there's like sound stories that come from all of these pieces in my room that when I listen to it, like, because I know them, like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I know this and I know this. But I feel like for the listener that doesn't know me or know any of these instruments, obviously, I would hope that they would feel that connection or that life in them. Obviously, we are in a weird point in history where like the AI world is kind of growing at a very fast pace. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk about AI music taking over, not just music, but
Yeah.
jobs in general. I mean, it's wild how fast and rapid that this is growing. And so a lot of the conversations I have where people ask me, they're like, are you worried about AI taking over music? And I'm I'm still trying to decide my stance on this because on one hand, like I love technology. I really love the efficiency it brings. But to some of that point of efficiency, it's like why do we need to be efficient to that degree in some senses? Like you lose uh like the time and place and the experiences that you've had, right?
Mm.
Or these instruments that have stories or that like the stories that I've come from and this music gets created. Like, and so I think that that is part of the danger in it, right? And so bringing it back to, I don't want to go on an AI tangent, but I think for listeners, like there's like a purity and a story behind each sound that you really truly can connect with because it's real, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that like is really meaningful to me. I
Mm.
feel like the everything that I created on the album, like it came from a place, inside myself, or it came from a place inside an instrument that had its own story.
Mm. That's beautifully framed. It's so interesting that I'd love to know that story about that piano that's been left behind you. You know, the amount of stories that probably came from that and how objects hold so much in a space.
Hmm.
We don't always know the story behind it, but it's like this generation of people now being in that space and playing it
Hmm.
is creating another level of the story and the frequency of this beautiful
Hmm.
object. And yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's quite interesting. And yeah, I mean the AI side, that's definitely a whole other podcast conversation. But
Sure. Yes.
I do know that is for a lot of creatives and in the music world, it is a bit of a concern, especially the amount that you're seeing out there that some people aren't even clear are AI. It's just like all these collaborations that you're seeing on YouTube, and
Hmm.
these artists never
Hmm.
came together, but they know how to pull it together. There is something
Hmm.
creative in that in itself. My personal take on that, without going into a big tangent as well, is I have faith in humanity, let's call it. And with
Hmm.
that, I feel that things are growing at a really fast pace and we're still here. and we are
Hmm.
still evolving and we are still
Hmm.
growing. And
Sure.
with that, then it's how we use, like, as we know, the tools and the, things that are at our that are not necessarily at our fingertips, but are available to us. We get
Hmm.
to choose the intention and how we use it.
Yeah.
And I'd
Yep.
like to think that the more people, as from an individual level, that take charge and ownership of their use and their way of using it, I think that's the best way forward. And that will require
Hmm.
intention, education around it,
Hmm.
understanding, the impacts and all of that. But like you, I think it's really important for us to just stay open and keep moving and making choices and creating space.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
carving away the things that are
Yeah.
not supportive and
Yeah.
helpful.
Yep.
I think that's beautiful. Wow. So cool, Adam. It's just been such a lovely time talking with you about your album and the music. I love listening to music that is for sleep or with purpose. And I think that,
Yeah.
when I saw the message come through about you potentially being on the podcast, I thought sleep music, I have to check this person out and what they're doing. And a lot of people
Sure.
don't know that they're listening to you because you're
Sure.
behind the scenes in with Apple Music and a lot of other things, I'm sure that they're listening to you all the time and they don't know it's you. So my last question on that really is how it does it feel, I suppose, to step forward after
Mm.
you were up front and center in touring, you were doing all this stuff on stage and performing, and then you pulled back and went behind the scenes in engineering and producing and composing this beautiful music. What's next? Are you stepping forward in your solo artistry? What just dream into what's
Sure.
next so I can
Great.
support that with you.
Absolutely. No, that's a great conversation. So I have really enjoyed the quiet. I think that's maybe a good way to put it, where, again, performing live or being in front of people has been a great journey. It taught me a lot about myself and what I love, what I don't love. And the past like 5 years have been a journey into like almost being anonymous, right?
Mm.
Where, I've done some film scores where, my name will be on it, or I release things under Adam Bokesch, my name. But the majority of my uh, career or like job would be under project names that nobody knows who I am, right? My most successful moniker is not my name. It's something that nobody knows. And I come into, if I'm hanging out with some friends, or like the other day, like we had a studio Christmas party and like there was folks like, like, what do you do or whatever? And I'm like, well, I make sleep music for a living. And they're like, oh yeah, I listen to the sleep sounds thing. And like, they scroll down and they're like, I'm like, this is me.
Yeah.
And they're like, I listen to you every night. And like, I've just met them. And so like, I think that's a funny story where so many people listen to my music and they have no idea who I am. And I've almost like enjoyed that sort of quietness where I just like they get to connect to something without feeling pressure to be like, "Ooh, I like this person," right? They're just able to like have this music in their life, and it's a really like kind of beautiful relationship, I think, where I don't feel like I have to be in the spotlight. I don't feel like I have to like, promote myself or like be on Instagram every single day being like, listen to me, like I have new music out. Like it's exhausting in a way, at least to me. I know maybe some people or some artists like fuel off of that, which is great. But for me, like I really have taken like the past 5 years to enjoy like the space that this brings, again coming back to that, the freedom to just be with my family, like we go out to eat or go on vacation or do whatever, and like nobody knows who I am, and it's really nice to feel a little bit of that freedom. um but to answer your other question, this Light Remembered album, it kind of sparked a little bit of a like, what is next for me? Like I don't want. fame or recognition in the sense of like being like this popular artist, but there is a little bit of a maybe is validation the right word? I'm not really sure yet, but
Mm-hmm.
just like being able to feel a little bit of a part of this community, right? Like the wellness music community or ambient music community, I guess, where, I want to feel included and not isolated.
Yeah.
Like being anonymous and being isolated are two different things, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that's maybe where I've explored a little bit of like this could be really fun to have these types of conversations like with you or with some of these magazine publications where it's like I feel like the Light Remembered album or some of these other things that I'm doing like deserve to be seen. And playlisting only goes so far because a lot of times people are just hitting play and then they just leave, right? And so I think there's some really cool conversations to be had about sleep and about music that
Yeah.
yeah, the way that these intertwine and everybody I talk to about this is like, oh yeah, like sleep is important. Sleep is, like people talk about like, oh, I go to the gym 3 days a week, or I eat well, but like no one's bragging about like, oh, I
I
slept eight and
slept
a half
last
hours.
night.
Yeah, like, they're like, okay, great. And so I think there's a little bit of there's like a little bit of a conversation that I think we can start bringing up and having about these types of things. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm here.
Beautiful. Yes. Well, yes to community and
Mm,
to regardless of being having not everyone know your name, but having that connection and
hmm
collaboration and all of the yummy
hmm
stuff that can definitely be cultivated in this space. So I
hmm
am celebrating you and all that you are and all that you're doing with your music, and really just so creatively helping us to reconnect to rest. Knowing that it's not just sleep, but this sacred space where we can heal and recalibrate and let go and renew and all of these amazing things,
hmm
which really it's our birthright. It's a necessity. It's not a
hmm
luxury. So thank
Yeah,
you so much for that, Adam.
absolutely.
Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Simone.
it. And I ask
Yeah.
all of my guests one question at the end, the same question, and that is, what is your soulful sound to the world? And that's just a prayer or desire that you wish for the
Wow.
world.
I'm just going to keep coming back to peace, just allowing yourself to have that simple, minimal space for your peace to enter your life.
Yes, yes to peace. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Simone.
As you come to the end of this offering, I want to invite you to take a moment to notice what's landed for you. And if you'd like to stay connected and receive more content like this, make sure you're subscribed, like, and share this video. It means the world to us. Thank you for being a part of this community. I'm sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are.